All right, call the meeting to order. Roll call. Council at Large Boots.
Here.
At Large Spear.
Here.
Council Ward number 1 Leeper.
Here.
Ward number 2 Anderson.
Here.
And Ward number 3 McNeil.
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing as there are none, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Boots with the first and Spear with the second.
Boots? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
All right, so the agenda has been approved, and we'll move on to the communications portion. There's nobody scheduled, so if anybody else would like to address the city council, please make your way to the podium and state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing as there is none, we'll close that portion of the meeting and move to the consent agenda, which these can be enacted with one motion, and they are the city council minutes from January 21st, Tipton Development Director's report from January of 19, the library minutes from December of 18, library director's report from December of 2018, and the claims list. Are there any of these that need to be pulled out? Seeing there are none, is there a motion to approve? McNeil with the first, and Spear with the second.
Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil? Boots? Yes.
All right, so now to the letter G, which is the public hearing. This would be a public hearing on the Aquatic Center project plans, specs, form of contract, and the engineer's estimate. Is there a motion to open the hearing? Leeper with the first and Boots with the second.
Spear?
Yes.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Boots? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
All right, so now we are to the public hearing. Mr. Wagner?
For this public hearing, we haven't received any comments. You've had the plans and specs on file at City Hall for anybody wanting to come in. And again, if anybody still wants to look at them, they certainly can. This has to do with the use of the settlement funds in order to make repairs in the building to the natatorium, the HVAC system there, roof replacement, exterior door replacement, and interior repair and upgrades. The base bid estimate was $497,041.65. Adding in a list of alternates to the base bid, the engineer's estimate is $542,213.65. So if you add the base bid plus alternates to the engineering fee, we go a bit over the $625,000 that we had in the fund for this purpose. But again, depending on where the bids come in, if we get good bids, competitive bids, we might be able to fit all the alternates into the project. If not, the council may choose to delete some of the alternates, but we'll just have to see what finally comes in.
Any questions about the Aquatic Center? All right. Seeing there are none, is there a motion to close the hearing?
Yep.
Anderson with the first,
Sure.
and McNeil with the second.
Leeper?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Boots? Yes. Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
And now on to old business, which is a resolution approving those said plans, specs, form of contract, estimated cost for the Aquatic Center renovation project. Are there any other questions regarding this? What was the time frame? Did they say how long?
for the,
Actual construction phase.
it is supposed to begin in around March 15th, and it's supposed to end around August 2nd.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion? Boots with the first and Spear with the second.
McNeil?
Yes.
Boots?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Spear? Leeper?
Yes.
All right, so now on to new business, which is a resolution. The first one is a resolution outlining the extent a former employee who is ineligible for rehire may attend city or departmental social functions. Mr. Wagner?
This was written by the city attorney who came to your recent meeting. And it is meant to cover any employee who becomes terminated voluntarily or involuntarily and is ineligible for rehire. And there are two situations that it attempts to cover. If a person is ineligible for rehiring, they're prohibited from attending any official city and/or departmental social functions that are not open to the general public. And just to give an example of what that means, not open to the general public. If you take, for example, I suppose the most extreme example would be the city event of the 4th of July. If there's an event like that where anybody in the public can come to, then this doesn't cover that type of situation. But if it's a city, official city or a departmental social function, then it would come into play. And there's an exception that unless they can attend unless the former employee receives written permission from the city manager to attend. The other situation is unofficial types of social events. So in that case, the person who's ineligible for rehiring shall contact the city manager prior to attending any unofficial city or departmental social functions that are not open to the general public and that occur within any city building or on any city grounds to determine the appropriateness of doing such. So in that case, for example, if an ex-employee was at a downtown establishment, a bar, and there's a group of current employees there, this wouldn't extend to that since it isn't city property, well, I guess this is meant to be applicable to city buildings or city grounds.
So mainly that would be only quote-unquote enforceable on city properties.
Right, yeah, there's only so much reach that the city would have outside of its own property.
I have to apologize, I missed all the stuff the last time, so I have some questions on this. I'd either like to table it if we could, so I have a little more time to check this out, or I guess ask my question, it's up to you.
Or what?
I could ask my questions, but I just as soon have a little bit of time to give those answers and think about them.
Well, I mean, it's up to the rest of the council, but I'm fine if we could talk about your questions outside of a meeting, you know, give us a little bit more opportunity to talk.
I would make a motion to table.
I just feel like the way it's written, it's a little open-ended, a little vague. Like, I'm not even sure I'm clear on what specific meetings we're addressing. One of the meetings that's held a departmental meeting is at the fairgrounds. That wouldn't cover that. And I don't know that, would help the situation.
Wouldn't that be an official departmental social function that's not open to the general public?
Well, I thought the city property kind of fell into that too. See, that's what I mean, I feel like it's so open-ended that, we could get up one day and decide, a certain meeting isn't eligible, I'm not.
You mean what kind of meeting?
Well, I don't know, because I feel that hasn't answered my questions. I don't know which meetings would be excluded or not excluded.
Well, if everybody who has a question could sort of funnel them to me, between the attorney who helped write this and me, maybe we can address those concerns.
All right, so Boots made the motion to table,
I'll second.
and Spear with the second.
Boots,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Spear,
Yes.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
All right, so that is tabled. And now we'll move on to the discussion of possible action concerning Medicaid Iowa Total Care Agreement. Mr. Ratliff.
Thank you. So the agreement in front of you, I'm sorry, it's a really long, lengthy agreement that I know you all read.
Yeah.
Huge detail. So as Iowa continues to privatize Medicaid, we're seeing another organization popping up called Iowa Total Care that's going to be an administrator for Iowa Medicaid program. In order for us to be reimbursed for the patients that have Iowa Total Care, which really aren't any yet, but they will be as the program develops, we have to become a network provider. So I just wanted to put the agreement in front of you guys to have it. If we don't take the agreement, then we won't get any reimbursement at all. So it's certainly in our advantage to take upon this agreement. Is that any questions for that?
Do we have to sign an agreement with all providers who do this?
So since I've been here, I've never seen us take on a new agreement. So this is going to be my first one. Generally, our largest two payers are going to be Walmart Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Mhm.
which hasn't gone anywhere for, I can't think of, and then Medicare. We redo our Medicare agreements and our Walmart and everybody else just to refresh them as required by the agreements every 3 years, but those are just a quick send in what type of ambulance you have, sign off that you're still in compliance with state regulations and we still have state license, and then most of all attach that $300 check for it, and you're good to go. In this case, there's no payment being sent to them, but we are creating a whole new agreement, so I'm bringing it in front of you. So,
Are you comfortable with this agreement?
yeah, I mean, I'd like to tell you that 70 pages is unusual, but it's not.
Okay.
And there's no bargaining that we can do on this side either. It's gonna be as good as we're gonna get.
I guess I'm still not clear.
Sure.
If, say, I don't have Wellmark or Total Care, do you need to sign an agreement with my carrier?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep, so there's two different options. Now, Iowa Total Care is gonna be completely different because it's Medicaid. And Medicaid, you have to be in a network provider, from my understanding, to take advantage of the funding from it. If you're, say you're having Wellmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is exclusive to Iowa, and you're down in Florida and have a heart attack, you're gonna fall into your out-of-network provider. So there's gonna be a higher deductible on your side, and certainly the provider can bill as an out-of-network provider. Sometimes you have to pay all that up front, or other times the insurance company can work things out with the provider to pay for that ahead of time rather than reimbursing you. With Medicaid, whether it be Illinois Medicaid, Iowa Medicaid, you either are an in-network provider or you do not receive anything. So for us, there have been occasions where we've had Illinois Medicaid patients, and it costs, I think, somewhere around $500 to become an in-network provider. We have one patient for the first time since I've been here, and we're going to generate maybe $100, and it's not worth going after. This, on the other hand, knowing that we're seeing more people either going into the Medicaid line, is definitely worth our time to get involved in. Did that kind of answer your
Yes,
question?
it did, thank you.
Cancel your trip to Florida?
No.
Jamaica's as nice as well this time of year.
All right, so if there's no more questions or comments for Mr. Ratliff, is there a motion?
So moved.
Spear with the first and McNeil with the second.
Anderson,
Yes.
Spear,
Yes.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil, Boots.
Yes.
And now on to discussion of possible action concerning a drip reimbursement request for $7,500 at 529 Cedar Street. Stuart Clark.
Yes, so I'm sure many of you have driven by. The project has been completed, the exterior. The total project cost a little over $31,000, well, a lot over $31,000. Originally, the original price was $29,000. So as always, when we do these grants, generally your costs are a little more expensive. Reimbursement was approved at the $7,500, and everything has been submitted, all of his bills have been paid, and so I request that we issue him a check for $7,500 for the drip application.
It looks nice.
Yes, it looks beautiful, actually. Yes.
Is there a motion then to approve?
So moved.
Anderson with first and Boots with the second.
Spear,
Yes.
Leeper, McNeil,
Yes.
Boots,
Yes,
Anderson.
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
And to number 4, which is the discussion and possible action concerning a return to the time limit for the communications section of the council's agenda. Mr. Wagner?
Well, this is something that's come up a few different times, and it seemed like the sentiment was there, put it on because it has been brought up. I don't really have a suggestion on what time limit should be. I was just trying to address the concern that it ought to be considered. So, if you feel that it's fine the way things are, then you would just leave it. If you want to talk about doing some sort of limitation, then if you have a suggestion, this would be the time.
Anyone? Have any thoughts?
Do you? It's your meeting.
Well, what the prevailing thinking was that it would be a 3-minute time limit for those who are not scheduled in the unscheduled portion of the communications, and 5 minutes if you had called ahead and asked to be put in the communications portion. And then if the person thought it would be any more than that, then they should ask to be actually added to the agenda. So,
That sounds good.
and of course, this would fall on the citizen. If they were to think that they needed time to be on the agenda, then by all means, please ask to be put on the agenda. Anybody else have some thoughts, or I see a lot of nodding heads.
I would have to agree with that, because I think sometimes in the unscheduled, people are looking for answers, but it's just something they're supposed to be presenting to us. So I think I would like the idea, if it's gonna be more than 5 minutes, then they should be on the agenda, so that we can actually discuss or whatever they need.
Yeah. So would there be a motion then for 3 minutes if it's unscheduled, 5 minutes if the citizen asks to be put in the communications portion, and then if the citizen thinks it's any more than 5-ish minutes, then to ask to be put on the agenda?
I guess I just have
Oh,
one
yeah,
other question. How do we make that known to the public? How are we gonna?
Well,
Name timer.
The TV?
we put a giant timer on TV.
No, I don't mean time-wise. I mean, we don't have that restriction right now, and all of a sudden we're gonna impose that. How does the public know that?
We can add it to the agendas that we've put out, and I guess we can do a soft opening, I guess, but.
I think you're gonna have to be a little mean
Yeah.
as people come to understand that these rules exist. You have to be willing willing to enforce it. I think you also might have to be willing to grant an extension to either of these if somebody is making a presentation that maybe they think it's going to be 5 minutes, but it runs a bit over. I think the mayor should have the discretion to extend that if there seems to be a valid reason for doing that.
I would second this motion.
Okay.
All right.
So it's at your discretion when to drop the gavel and say that's, your time's up.
All right, so that would be the guidance then, a 3, a 5, and then it has to be put on the agenda.
Yes.
All right. Lieber with the first, and then Boots with the second.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil,
Yes.
Boots,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
All right, so that brings us down to the reports, the mayor's reports. I don't have anything this week. Council, committees, city manager.
I just have a few updates that I'd like to mention. I'm thinking that 3 of these items will be on your February 20th agenda. And remember, we moved the meeting from the 18th to the 20th. The first one has to do with a proposal that we're expecting from, or concerning the Hardacre. You know, remember that we had, the city appropriated TIF funds, and we've been getting front-end approval on the use of them. We've been working with Phoenix Theaters in Dubuque. They do consulting, and I'm expecting them to present a contract to the Hardacre board. It's gonna be in the area of 3,000 to 4,000, I think. But it would include drawings, the basis of an estimate for the inside. And this isn't the exterior, this is the interior. How to do the lobby, how to lay out the movie theater room itself. And the reason for this is, if the Hardacre is going to do fundraising, it has to have an idea of the amount of funds it's trying to raise. And if it works out, if it plays out that the board gets an agreement, this is just the type of group whose advice they need. I mean, if it plays out like we're hoping, what the information that they could come up with could be essential to the further development of the theater. So that's an item that I think is probably going to be on for your next agenda. Another one has to do with Louisa and the city's share in that. I believe we're going to have an electrical consulting agreement. I don't know the exact title of it, but Bob Latham has found that there is significant interest in the city's share at Louisa. Now, I don't have any written reports. He didn't want to do that. He just gave me a verbal update that, and the reason why is some of these potential buyers are going to talk to each other. They know each other, but they may not know everybody who might be interested. And his concern is that, first, if it isn't confidential about who some of the potential bidders are, they may drop out. Second, if they know who the other bidders are, it may affect what they do just because they know who it is. So what we're expecting to see is a proposal to do a request for proposals. It would play out that the council would open those proposals, just like a bid opening, And at that point, those who are vying for this share would become known. The council would select the one that it wants to work with, and then we would work through an agreement for the sale and see if that works out. I shared what Latham thinks is the next step, the RFP, with the city attorney to see if she agrees. And I haven't gotten her opinion yet. But if it plays out the way Latham thinks, I should have his proposal at your next meeting for the next step. We're going to have a resolution on the next council agenda regarding setting a public hearing on plans and specs for the various streets that were selected for resurfacing in 2019. And this includes West 7th from Lemon to the city limits, West 6th from Lynn to Locust, 4th Street from, they're calling it Spruce, it lines up with Spruce or the Lumberyard, to Orange, Sycamore 2nd to 4th. The timeline that the engineer has in mind is the April 1 council meeting. That would be the first opportunity for the council to select a bid. Now that's if this timeline holds up. But it would begin with setting a public hearing at your next meeting. The fourth item has an outside chance of being on the next agenda, but I don't know. It has to do with the electrical project in the downtown alley. The original timeline, which was set between the engineer and us, Lloyd and me, would have had the first step of setting the public hearing at your January 7th meeting. Now, the soonest they can do it is your rescheduled meeting to February 20th, which would basically put the project 6 weeks behind our original scheduled idea. I've been contacting them to see that they don't let any more time go by. Hopefully we'll have something by then. That's all I have for tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wagner. Department heads? All right, seeing that there is none, we're down to adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment? Anderson with the first, and Lieber with the second.
McNeil? Booth?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Lieber?
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.